Okay, go ahead and sit down. Thank you. I'm Judith Wightman, and this is my informative speech on the topic of driving across the lifespan. So my audience was just in front of the camera, and now they're seated in front of me. So according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, in 2013, about 32,000 people died in car crashes on U.S. roadways. That number, 32,000, is lower than it was, say, 20 years ago. So collectively, we have made some improvements in driving safety, mostly because of changes to cars, not because of changes to drivers. So 32,000 people, still too high. Nobody who studies this thinks that that's an okay number. So we need to reduce fatal car crashes. When we look at who crashes and why, people of any age can crash at any time, and they do. We certainly see crashes across every age of driver. But we see more crashes for younger and older drivers. When we look at teenagers, their crash rate is much higher than for people who are middle-aged. When we look at people over age 65 and over age 75 especially, they don't cause very many crashes, but it's mostly because there are fewer of them driving, fewer people and fewer people who drive in the older age group. So we don't see as many crashes for the older age group. However, their crash risk per mile driven gets high again, just like it was for teenagers. So there's two different ways to measure this, and either way you measure it, we need to do something about it. So when we look at younger drivers and older drivers and ask why they are more likely to crash, there are different reasons for younger and older drivers, and those reasons pertain to their development, and so that's where we're going today. So when we look at 16, 17, 18-year-old drivers who have an elevated crash risk, what is true of people that age? So one thing that's true of them is that their reaction time is very fast. Our reaction time is never faster than when we're 16. So in that sense, we should be good drivers when we're 16, but we're not. And so what's missing? What's mixed? Their vision and hearing is also very good at 16, as good as it's ever going to be. What's missing for the younger driver? And what's missing is experience, but experience is not the end of the story. Because when we compare 16-year-old brand new drivers and 17-year-old brand new drivers, the 16-year-olds still have a higher crash risk, even considering the same number of months or years of experience. So there's something about the 16-year-old that is different from the older person. And what we think is different is mainly lack of development in the frontal part of the brain. So the cerebral cortex is the outer wrinkled covering of the brain. It's divided into sections or lobes. The frontal lobes are not well developed yet. When we're 16, it takes until we're about 25 to finish developing. And the functions of the frontal lobes are judgment, decision-making, inhibition, which is our ability to stop ourselves from doing everything that pops into our head. And so that is really the explanation, or one of the explanations for why teenagers have a higher crash risk. When we go to the other end of the driving continuum and look at drivers over age 65 and especially over age 75, it's a different set of factors, but still related to development. So the older driver has tons of experience, that part is good, but their reaction time is much slower than it was at age 16. In addition, they have vision and hearing declines, just a normal part of aging, and they have more trouble when the driving demands increase, when the demands on attention increase, they have a harder time attending to those multiple demands. So when we get a lot of traffic, when it's an uncontrolled intersection, when it's dark and raining or icy, older drivers tend to have more trouble than you would expect given their level of experience. So what do we do about this problem? And because the causes of the differential crash rates are different for people of different ages, the solution should be different too. In general, when we look at how to reduce crashes, there are three main strategies. The first strategy to reduce crashes is to change the driver's behavior directly. And that doesn't work very well with teenagers, so we can get it, that's a whole other topic. But changing drivers' behavior directly has not worked well for teenagers, but it does work well for older drivers. So to that end, AARP has a driver retraining program, and older drivers who want to continue driving are often very motivated to complete these programs. They do the work, they do the assignments, it's volunteers who teach the courses, and they teach specific ways to accommodate the changes related to aging. So one strategy would be to learn how to scan the driving scene in a way that you didn't need to do when you were younger, but now you need to do it because your vision is declining. So that there are specific strategies that older drivers can learn to compensate for the changes related to aging, and those work very well to reduce their crash risk. The second main strategy to reduce crashes is to change the context in which people drive. This has been the strategy for teenagers. We haven't been successful at changing their behavior directly, so instead we give them driving privileges little by little and let them get older and let their brains develop, and then give them eventually a full unrestricted license. So for teenagers, what we've done is graduated driver's licensure, and all 50 states have rules about how old you have to be to get a permit, how old you have to be to get a regular license, and what happens in the middle, what kind of parameters are around the driving situation. So graduated driver's licensure laws vary by state, but they often say no teenage passengers in the car, no driving after a certain hour, and you have to have a certain number of hours of practice with a regular licensed driver. And that has worked. That has helped to reduce the teenage crash rate. And then the final strategy, which is really the way society is going, is to take the human out of it completely. And so if you've heard of autonomous vehicles or driverless cars, that's probably the answer. It really is, because we have automation in other realms where we say, wow, humans really are not good at this task. And you could argue driving is one of those, that we are just not very good. We fall asleep, we get distracted, we text, we drink and drive, we get older, we can't see very well. You know? So there's a lot of factors related to just being human that make us not very good drivers. And so most people have some autonomous technology in their vehicle already. They might not realize it, but anti-lock brakes, for example. The driver still has to push the brake pedal, but then the car does the rest of the work to try to keep you from skidding out of control. So as we move forward, that may be an answer, to just take the human out of it entirely. So to summarize, the crash rate on U.S. highways, there are too many people killed in crashes on U.S. highways. In a recent year, about 32,000 people. That's too many, and psychologists and people who study public health are trying to many strategies to reduce that crash risk. The crash risk is related to age, and the strategies we use to reduce crash risk vary by age. Thank you.